College football nerds here talking best college football backfields, best running back rooms of all time. We got a top 5 and then 3 that we almost had make the cut that just missed it. We're going to talk about at the end. Obviously, this is a little subjective, some art, some science. We're going to get into that. But first, we got some homework for you. 3 things. Number 1, let us know clearly who your best running back room of all time is. Explain yourself in the comments. Number 2, we want to know who we left out. Like, what's the one that should have been considered that might not be your best of all time that we left out? And if you want to see the 3 that we left out, you got to watch the whole video. Number 3, let us know if you think it's fair that we used NFL numbers in production consideration for best of all time. Let us know what you think there. So how did we get here? Well, we did a tweet the other day and it did crazy numbers and a lot of y'all responded. We wanted to know who was better than 2014 Georgia, Todd Gurley, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel. Give us a better backfield. We got a ton of responses, and we were thinking about doing some off-season content, so here you go. We took those responses, whittled it down to a group of manageable numbers, and then started diving into the statistics and the production, and this video is what you got. So one last note before we get into this. There's some ground rules here. First off, no quarterbacks. Quarterbacks route, 95 Nebraska. Tommy Frazier took a lot of production from that backfield, was part of the backfield, but also part of the passing game. We want to limit it to that. And number 2 in rules, it's got to be 3. No 1-2 punches. Barry Sanders, Thurman Thomas, while maybe the best backfield of all time, if we're just talking about pure ability, we wanted to make you think and go beyond just having 2. Charles White, Marcus Allen, that sort of thing. So that's where we got to this best backfield with these rules. One other thing, why did we consider NFL numbers in this? Well, a lot of these players that came out of these backfields went on to have great NFL careers, but had short stints in college. Either they were playing behind some other guys in these backfields or they went pro early versus, if you look at sum totals, guys like Nick Chubb, even though he had an injury, played all 4 years. Sony Michel, all 4 years. So we wanted to sort of equalize that. And ostensibly, if you were a baller in the NFL, then you were probably a baller in college. Maybe the numbers didn't show it. So we tried to equalize it that way. So this 5 is in no particular order. And first up,
snap it to Michel. He's running to the left. Angling. 25-20. Got a block from 50, 10, 5. Touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. Dogs win it. We're headed to Atlanta.
2014 Georgia. And if you're being honest, I know you're going to want to argue with me. If you're being honest, you'd say, not counting NFL numbers, this is the best college football running back room of all time, because on pure totals, pure averages, there's a lot of production here. So what are we looking at? So you got 2 columns in the stat box. The right side, obviously, NFL production. The left side is college production. But just to show you how serious and crazy we got with this, this is just the averages for the season that these guys played together. And we did this for all of the ones in question, all the teams in question. And not only that, we went into each individual game and stripped out all of the numbers that didn't belong to these 3 running backs. So if Georgia played Alabama and 6 people got carries, we only took the numbers from the 3 running backs in question and compared that to what Alabama normally allows. So that's how we got this middle number of percentage of opponent averages, which is a hugely important number in all the statistics we do, especially in our computer modeling and things like that. That number is reflective of Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, or Todd Gurley in a given game, what their actual production was. No quarterback rushing yards, no 6-string running back rushing yards. That's what you got. And on that, you've got 6.2 yards per carry for this Georgia Bulldog team, 151% of opponent averages, which is really good. But then those totals, man, those totals are where they really get you. And some of that, this is why we use NFL numbers, is because there's a lot of years, a lot of 4-year seasons here, and not a lot of playing 1 and done, 2 and done, that sort of thing. 129 touchdowns, 13,000 plus yards from scrimmage. So you'll see the NFL numbers are pretty good, but these careers aren't finished. And at the end, when we do our totals and pick a winner, or let you pick a winner, we'll explain something we did statistically to adjust for that so that you can compare a 1990 Notre Dame to a 2014 Georgia and include some NFL production as well. 1990 Notre Dame, that's a good one to go to next.
Detroit, Jerome Bettis for a touchdown.
Unless you're an old head like me, 1990 Notre Dame might not have been on your radar. What's really interesting about 1990 Notre Dame is Jerome Bettis is the name that you probably are familiar with. Ricky Watters had a crazy good NFL career. Dorsey Levens had a really good NFL career. And Rocket Ismail, while he was a receiver on the next level for the most part, did have some rushing production. He had a lot of rushing yardage, and he was part of this backfield. He wasn't just split out wide. He had a lot of rushing yardage and a ton of return yardage as well. So he was a force to be reckoned with on this team. Now, this is where we have to do some adjustments, and we will at the end, because the NFL numbers are where they're really eye-popping. The 43,000 yards from scrimmage for this group, the 252 total touchdowns, and the 426 starts. And starts are important. I want to touch on that a little bit, because I think there's very few things that are a better indicator of longevity and how good you are, that you can be named a starter on an NFL team. And all of these teams that we're looking at had multi-year starters, but if you have longevity, a 10-plus year career, like a lot of these guys on this team in Miami, that's where you really get into showing just how good you were. The numbers for their averages are really good, but I do want to call out the rushing yards per game were very low. The year that these guys played together, there was a lot of other running back production from guys that didn't go on to the next level and have a lot of success. And then Dorsey Levens left, transferred out, and went to Georgia Tech for his final 2 years. But 197% of opponent averages is particularly good, though I will say they faced a lot of very good running defenses, the best in this group, at least on pure numbers. But those numbers were so low, 3.0 yards per carry, that if you have a good game, 6 yards per carry on a few carries, 117 yards, especially if you're coming in as a backup. A lot of backups, freshmen, guys that play at the very end, a lot of times they have very high yards per carry numbers. So that's a little bit skewed, but still a beast of a backfield to contend with in college, especially all four of these, and considering how dynamic Rocket Ismail was. Then you had just a monstrous production in the NFL. The combined college yardage, almost 9,000 yards from scrimmage, 80 touchdowns in an era where yards weren't being racked up with the modern offenses, and there was a lot of low-scoring games. So that's a pretty interesting thing of note. I really want y'all, before you scoff at this one, to look at the careers of Ricky Watters and Dorsey Levens in particular. Like I said, Jerome Bettis, but those two guys had really good NFL careers. These guys were alpha dogs in their locker rooms and might be overlooked because you're familiar with some of the names on these other teams, but you should be familiar with those before you make a decision. Next up.
For the screen. McFadden pulls up down the middle. Peyton Hillis, touchdown Arkansas.
2006-2007 Arkansas, the averages here are for both of those seasons because they did play together. This is Darren McFadden, Felix Jones, and one Madden cover, Peyton Hillis. And the college numbers were really good. They're really close to what we saw, at least on averages, to that 2014 Georgia team. And this is one that y'all came through with over and over again in the Twitter responses. It was this one and the 2013 or 2018 Alabama teams. Because we have a large SEC footprint, we got a lot of responses on these, and they were absolutely a terror. What's interesting about 2006-2007 Arkansas is they had a lot more carries. That team ran the ball a lot more than any of the other teams on this list, and they still were able to keep up that 6 yards per attempt average. The 149% of opponent averages is really good. The total number's not quite as good as Georgia, 10,448 yards rushing, 89 touchdowns. Still very good numbers, not quite as good as Georgia, but still, I think, on averages, right in line with that Georgia team. NFL production is where they drop off a little bit. And, if you would have asked me, I would have said, I knew in the back of my head, Felix Jones had him with a lot of fantasy teams. He had a pretty long career, maybe not a top-line starter, but had a long career. Darren McFadden, I knew was hurt, but probably had a ton of production. Not a lot of production. Peyton Hillis had that 1 year that got in the Madden cover. 133 combined starts, still great numbers for any given good backfield. But when we're talking best of all time, we do have to look at how they did on the next level. And I think a combination of injuries and just not being able to be the starter on their teams sort of pushed those numbers down. What was particularly good about this unit, though, was how good they were catching the ball out of the backfield and really good kick returners here. Felix Jones, I think, was a really good kick returner on the next level for the years that he was on an NFL roster. But with that being said, I think that once you start looking at those NFL numbers, they separate themselves a little bit from the other teams, or the other teams separate themselves from this 2006-07 Arkansas Razorback squad. Next up,
here's the give. Henry, nice hole. He's free. He's into the secondary. 30, 20, 10, 5. That's a better sign. Touchdown, Alabama. 50 yards for El Tractorcito.
2013 Alabama. This one comes with a little bit of controversy. My partner in crime, Josh, thinks we should have included Alvin Kamara. I don't think we should have. He pointed out fairly that Jerome Bettis didn't get a lot of carries on that 1990 squad for Notre Dame, but Alvin Kamara didn't record a single stat. If you want to just look at pure running back rooms on paper, this possibly is the best of all time, because you would have to include Alvin Kamara. But if you think about running back rooms to contend with, you're not contending with an Alvin Kamara. Alty Tenpenny, though, a player who later died that would have put some big numbers up, was on this squad, and I think that he was probably an NFL quality running back as well. The NFL numbers, like Georgia, they're not finished. So Derrick Henry, Hall of Fame career, still probably has a lot of numbers to put up. Kenyon Drake, TJ Yeldon, both, I think, if you look at them combined, they would probably be like if you take like for like, Nick Chubb versus Derrick Henry, they cancel each other out. TJ Yeldon and Kenyon Drake together would probably get you to a Todd Gurley, maybe not. The numbers, the percent of opponent averages in college, not as high as I expected it to be. Alabama is known, unlike some of the other teams, they are known for effectively taking a knee at the end of the game, even with their starters, some of their starters in. So you would have seen some of that reflected in these numbers, but still good numbers. Not quite as good as Georgia and some of the others on averages. On totals, when you include Alvin Kamara, you see that you're getting really close to that 2014 Georgia squad. And then NFL, I think it's a slam dunk for this 2013 Alabama team, because you're going to have two Hall of Famers, lots of numbers in a high-powered offensive era. But that's up to y'all. Let us know in the comments what you think. Should we have included Alvin Kamara, even though he didn't record a stat for this Alabama team? All right, up next.
Give it to Portis. Lost his balance, but keeps on going, and he might tear it open. Touchdown. They thought they had him. They didn't wrap him, and suddenly he was gone.
Did we save the best for last? I think we did. 2001 Miami Hurricanes, crazy good backfield, and a lot of y'all, this is overwhelmingly the number one response to our question of who's better than 2014 Georgia. If you look at just college production, this Miami squad wasn't as good. That 2001 team wasn't as dominant as some of the best teams of all time. We did a statistical profile, and there's a video you can watch that I think we did a really good job of, that showcased how offensively they weren't that dominant. It wasn't because of the backfield. I think they were held back because of quarterback, which probably impacted the backfield. But another reason the college numbers don't compare to Georgia quite as well is because you had guys like Willis McGahee, who's one of the four, had a great NFL career, but only played 19 games in college. He had 8 games in this 2001 season, and then had a good 2002 season and went pro. Whereas like a Nick Chubb played all 4 years, you have a guy that's 1.5 and done, which is obviously going to weigh into at least the totals here. So the averages are still good, and if you notice, on average, two of these categories, they're behind a lot of others, but they're really close. So like where Arkansas or Alabama was like 6 yards a carry, they're 5.7. Still really close in an era where the offenses weren't as explosive as they are now. But it's the NFL numbers, y'all, that really make a difference. 424 starts. You had over 44,000 yards. You had 268 touchdowns. A lot of production from all 4 of these guys, but a ton of production from 3 of them. And you could say the same about 1990 Notre Dame, Levens, Waters, and obviously Jerome Bettis. So I think you're kind of splitting hairs there, which one you pick. But on totals, Miami did have a little bit better NFL production than that 1990 Notre Dame team. So let's look at the totals that might help you inform your decision on which one you think is the best of all time. All right, coming out on top in our combined rankings is Georgia, but there's a little bit of a nuance there. We kind of helped them out a little bit, not intentionally, but what we did was we took the shortest tenure of the players currently still playing in the NFL from this group of players to get a kind of a snapshot and maybe project how they're going to go. So 2014 Georgia had Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, 5-year careers so far, which is the shortest of this list. And so we took the first 5 years of 1990 Notre Dame, 2001 Miami, and took that snapshot, averages and totals, to get a score for that NFL number. And that's probably giving too much credit to Georgia. We didn't really have any other objective way to do it, because you see like a Sony Michel's career is sort of winding down a little bit, whereas the third player on 2001 Miami or 1990 Notre Dame still had many 5, 6, 7 years of NFL production left to go. And 2001 Miami's numbers were hurt because they were number 5 in our college. And we talked a little bit about that, where you had players leaving early, different eras and things like that. So this is where the art comes in, and you can't just be purely objective with this. You also have different eras and that sort of thing. I think as you see over time, being able to step back and look at full NFL careers, you're probably going to see that 2001 Miami team bubble up to the top just ahead of 1990 Notre Dame in the NFL and combined numbers. That's going to really play into this. But there's one team that I think has a chance to beat them all. It's not 2013 Alabama, because even with Kamara's numbers, they're not number 1 currently. So I don't know that they would get there after the end of their career. But there's one that does, and they were left out of our list. So let's talk about the 3 teams that we left out, and we'll wrap it up. Others we considered: 2011 Oregon. That was a crazy good backfield. LaMichael James, Kenyon Barner, DeAnthony Thomas didn't have quite the NFL career, so they were really down in terms of overall numbers, but we did consider them because they were an elite unit and put up a ton of numbers. And that's in spite of having a quarterback that also ran a lot and took production away from the 2012 Wisconsin. Monty Ball, James White, Melvin Gordon, 2 good NFL careers. Monty Ball, not so much. But some of the people from Big Ten country pointed out in our Twitter thread that was a down year. 2012 was a real down year for the Big Ten, and statistically it would have skewed in their favor a whole lot. 2018 Alabama is the one that I think has the chance to potentially surpass the 2014 Georgia, 2001 Miami, 1990 Alabama. Damian Harris, Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs, Jerome Ford, and Brian Robinson Jr. Ford got later transferred away, had a really good year for Cincinnati in their playoff year. He's playing behind Nick Chubb right now, probably gonna get traded as a starter later in his career, but even without him, you've got 4 established starters. Josh Jacobs, MVP quality running back, potentially Hall of Fame career. Najee Harris and Brian Robinson Jr. both established starters early in their career, so we'll see how that goes for them. Damian Harris has been a starter off and on, very solid career, not elite numbers, but to be the 3rd or 4th best in a backfield and still have a solid NFL career means that these other guys, Jacobs, Harris, and Brian Robinson, could potentially put up numbers that combat or compete with the others. That's the ones we left out. Let us know who you think we left out, what we should have put in, maybe a 2018 Memphis. Let us know that. Obviously, you had other homework that we told you at the beginning. This is our list. This is our numbers. We really had fun doing this one. Hopefully, we can do some more wide receivers, quarterbacks. We'll get after those as well. If y'all watch this, if you share this, if you put this places where you talk football and we do some numbers on this video, we are going to do some more just like this. We hope you loved it. It was a lot of work. Thanks so much. Have a great off season, and God bless.